Type, and this is the Indiana Libertarian update for the week of February 6, 2017. Sorry for the late arrival. We had some tech issues and scheduling issues, but better late than never. The Indiana Libertarian update goes nationwide this week with National Libertarian Party Chair Nicholas Sarwark. The interview is insightful and tailored to fellow libertarians, so don't miss it. I think you're going to find some interesting opinions in the course of the interview as well. We've got that in just a few moments, but first let's check in on the libertarian news and events from around the state of Indiana. We have a pretty full schedule, so let's make sure that we get those out there and share those items. First up, the Libertarian Party of Morgan County is going to be having their meeting. That'll be happening on Thursday at 6 p.m. That's at Ralph and Ava's Cafe and Catering. That's on Main Street in Mooresville, Indiana. Again, Ralph and Ava's Cafe and Catering in Mooresville, Indiana. 6 p.m. tomorrow for all you folks down on the southwestern part of Central Indiana, down in Morgan County. Also tomorrow, or excuse me, on Thursday, February 9th, from noon to 2, Indiana's medicinal cannabis legalization town hall meeting. This certainly has been getting a lot of news coverage and seems to be getting some legitimate traction in the state legislature this year. That town hall meeting is sponsored by the Higher Fellowship. It'll be at the State House from noon to 2 on Thursday of this week. Also, Thursday of this week, down in Salem, Indiana, the Washington County Libertarian Meetup is going to be happening. That's from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Sissy's Tasty House, located on South Main Street there in Salem, Indiana. Again, the Washington County Libertarian Meetup, that is happening on Thursday, the 9th at 7 p.m. there in Salem, Indiana. Going on way down south, Southern Indiana, Louisville, and the Southern Indiana and Louisville Libertarian Meetup, that happens on February 14th, so that's going to be happening next week on Valentine's Day. Take your sweetheart to the Kingfish Restaurant there in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and enjoy some wonderful food, beverages, and some righteous libertarian company for the Southern Indiana and Louisville Libertarian Meetup happening next week. Also, next Wednesday, February 15th from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m., be sure to join our friends with the League of Women Voters of Indianapolis at the Indiana State House for the Pack the House for Redistricting Reform. We as libertarians understand the special sting of gerrymandered districts here in the state of Indiana. They are designed to do one thing, and that is to keep existing parties in power. So, again, that's February 15th. The day after Valentine's Day, that's Wednesday of next week, at the State House from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Then the following Saturday, the State Central Committee is going to be getting together at the Antelope Club. That's from 10 a.m. to noon, February 18th, and that's in downtown Indianapolis. If you've not visited the Antelope Club, I highly recommend it. It is frequented by many libertarians as well as folk in the old parties, but hey, we let them in. It's okay with us. And if you haven't done so, be sure to get your plan together to attend the 2017 State Convention. If you missed last week's recording, be sure to check it out. It's available on the Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. We talked to Rodney Banker about some specifics. We have about 40 rooms reserved at the Tropicana Executive Conference Center, and that's on the mighty Ohio River. If you want to be part of those of that block of rooms and to enjoy the special discounts, be sure to check that out. Even if you're just planning to go down for the meetings and such themselves, be sure to sign up and get your program together so you can attend all the breakout sessions. Okay, now we did have some issues with our recording this week. I had to edit this heavily. It's not my greatest piece of work, but it is quite understandable, and I think it is quite informative. Give the interview a few minutes. I think you're going to enjoy it. You'll find it quite informative. As promised, let's hear the latest from Libertarian Party National Chair Nicholas Sarwark.
Just under 40 years old. I'm pushing on it, but I'm not there yet. I live with my wife and 3 children in Phoenix, Arizona, which is actually where I was introduced to the Libertarian Party when I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old, something like that. My dad used to take me to Maricopa County meetings where I met people like Ernie Hancock and Judge John Buttrick and, some of the really cool names in Libertarian Party history. It was neat to meet them as a kid. And I really have never identified as anything other than libertarian my whole life. When I got out of college in Maryland, just outside D.C., I got involved in the state Libertarian Party. I ended up eventually being the state chair of the Maryland Party. After I finished law school and moved to Colorado to be a public defender, I got sort of volunteered to be vice chair of the state party there, which was a lot of fun. We got some good stuff done, including being the only political party to back Amendment 64, which was the first state in the country to re-legalize marijuana.
Thank you for that, by the way, having visited Colorado in the last year. I mean, for quite a memorable trip, I can assure you.
It is pretty awesome, and you know, everything. The only downsides were was a lot more money for government schools and a lot less violent crime. So, other than those,
with all this, let's put this into a question. Talk to me a little bit about 2016. How'd it go?
I think we did great. You know, it was I was in Albuquerque for the Johnson campaign celebration and election night party, and if you look closely at my recent interview the next morning, you can tell that both Matt Welch and I were very hungover. But that night, it was a weird kind of dichotomy, because a lot of the Johnson campaign staffers and campaign team members were very disappointed that we didn't hit 5% nationally. We didn't meet some of the thresholds that they had been working toward. And I was running around basically giddy as a schoolgirl, because we had tripled the previous vote total record ever in Libertarian Party history. We had, for the first time in party history, actually covered the spread between the winning candidate and the old party candidate who came in second, so that we actually controlled the balance of power. And we had gotten the message out to so many more people, and so many more people had kind of come in and taken a look at the Libertarian Party, that to me it felt like we had reached that next level. We had shifted gears, and we're ready to kind of come into our own as a political party in this country. And so I was really happy and optimistic, while other people were sad. And I guess there's a bigger life lesson for that, which is, you know, you have to decide what success means to you. You have to decide what's important to you, and you have to calibrate your expectations based on what's possible and what's in your control. If you do that, you can, you know, remain a happy warrior and keep fighting. If you start tying your conception of success to things that are outside your control, for example, if you say, look, you know, my campaign will be successful if the people who run the Commission on Presidential Debates, you know, the Republicans and Democrats who built up this bipartisan campaign commercial for Republicans and Democrats, I'll be successful if they let me into their little game. Absolutely. I'm seeing a lot more involvement across almost every state. I am not aware of any states where people have actually, you know, kind of been disappointed or gone downhill or checked out after the national election, which is something that we're very conscious of at the national level. You know, if you look at traditional membership retention and fundraising numbers, there's always a peak in a presidential election year, and then traditionally the Libertarian Party has gone into a trough right after, as people, you know, realize, hey, we didn't win the White House, I should quit now. And we're doing a lot of things proactively to remain engaged with a lot of the people who came in from the Johnson campaign, with old school libertarians who have re-energized or reactivated. We're keeping them engaged and keeping them updated and communicating more with them about the things that we're doing in the off season, as it were. You know, we just are co-plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the FEC. We just won a summary judgment motion there that's going to force the FEC to go back and actually take a look at the mountain of evidence that we presented, that the Commission on Presidential Debates was running an illegal bipartisan campaign commercial.
Absolutely.
We're filing an amicus brief in a Supreme Court case that addresses whether or not you lose your Second Amendment rights because you exercise your First Amendment free speech rights to get a medical marijuana card in a state where it's legal. There's a very, very big case that is being applied for cert at the Supreme Court that we're supporting, because we believe that you shouldn't have to give up one right or the other. We're going out there and actively cultivating donors and trying to raise funds to make sure that we have the money to go places like Ohio, for example, where the Republicans kicked us off the ballot with a bunch of dirty tricks.
2017. What's your take as an individual? What's your take as the chair of the Libertarian Party as we go into this completely uncharted territory with the new president? Of course.
I think it's safe to say at this point that the more interesting of the two old party candidates was elected. I'm not sure whether he's more or less dangerous than the runner-up, but we've been watching really closely what's been happening. Somebody asked me, "What's your overall strategy?" I said, the whole thing is effing insane, and we just take it one. Is the way the rest of the country does. We do the same thing. We look at each policy, each action as it comes, and we try and get out in front of it as quickly as possible. So when the executive order that, the Muslim ban, basically, when that came down, we got out in front of it with a press release right away. We came out with a message in solidarity with the Muslim communities that were being discriminated against or persecuted in this country, to make sure that everyone's real clear that we stand for individual freedoms. We actually came out with a press release that said positive things, at least about the concept of trying to reduce the number of government regulations, the executive order that he signed about that. So we're trying to call them like we see them, and support the things that are good, oppose the things like, say, the nomination of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General that are bad.
What's your advice? What do you want to see happen with 2017 and as we set the stage for 2018?
What I want to see happen is I want the state parties to take advantage of the momentum, the people who are excited, and really run with that. Go and work on issues within your state. Go out there and start now in recruiting candidates for 2018. In states like, for example, Indiana, you guys have always set a great example by running a lot of candidates up and down the ballot, which is something I personally think is a great strategy. I think that we can do more by making sure that every voter has a libertarian to vote for every single office, to provide legitimacy to the party. It makes us look bigger than we are, to be perfectly frank. And it also puts us in a better strategic spot where if we have kind of the sleeper candidate who's really good and they don't know about it, we can direct a bunch of resources in that direction. But it's harder to see it coming if he's running, with a slate of 100 other candidates all over the state. The old parties really don't know what's coming. Don't slide backwards.
2020. Now, you touched on something that's been a bit of a discussion going on here at the Indiana Libertarian Update. Larry Sharp has been on recently, and also, and we've had some other folks comment on a debate: do we flood the ballot? I've been a paper candidate many times, and when I do a paper candidacy, I respond to the debates and the questionnaires. I just don't go out and do a lot of fundraising. Is it okay to be that type of candidate, or should we really focus on a particular race? And kind of what I'm advocating, and as much as anything, just to see how it panned out in this next election cycle, is instead of me running, I'm going to align myself with a very serious candidate, and I'm going to either do press releases or volunteer coordination and really be a supporter of somebody who's more of a serious campaign and focus our efforts. What do you think is the best tactic? Should we focus our efforts, or as you said earlier, should we be looking at the broad spread and really filling the ballot like we've been able to here in Indiana?
We should do both. We should be difficult to defend against. One of the things, what you're planning on doing is perfect. I think that everybody, if you're in a position where you're able to do it, you're able to answer those questionnaires, you're able to take a decent professional headshot and put your name up there as a citizen who's willing to serve your community and give people a libertarian option, you should do it. You should do it because people deserve that option. We don't do it for ourselves. We do it for our friends and neighbors who want to vote libertarian and haven't been able to before. If you're not going to do it, then you should do what you're doing, which is help someone else who's going to run. Help them by being their treasurer. Help them by helping them answer those questionnaires. Help, in whatever way that you're able to do. The reason we flood the ballot is we are able to magnify our force by making the old parties defend in places they don't otherwise have to defend. We're able to make them spend their money. Even in a small state legislative race, if someone is not running unopposed, and I'm sure that your districts are as gerrymandered as they are here in Arizona, where, either a Republican or a Democrat's going to win, and that's just how it is. If the old party that would otherwise be in opposition is too weak to actually put somebody up, which oftentimes they are, we can be the only opposition. We can be the difference between, a Republican or a Democrat running unopposed and them having to actually show up to debates, them having to actually spend money on voter contact, them actually having to answer questions of the press rather than having a cakewalk. And so, for your $50, I don't know what the filing fee is there, but let's say it's $50. Your $50 can make an old party spend $10,000. And then that's $10,000 that old party state committee doesn't get to spend in another race. And so you make them spread their resources around so that when there is a candidate that we're going to raise a bunch of money and throw $50,000 or $100,000 behind their race, they're spread too thin to defend. We have to take advantage of the strategic position we've been in. When our back is against the wall and we have, what they'll say, you have no chance to win, that gives us more strength than they realize if we're willing to absorb it and look at it from the right perspective. Because when we're not supposed to win, we have nothing to lose. What's the worst that's going to happen? We're not going to take the office. So what? We're going to make their life a living hell, and we're going to make them deal with libertarian issues. And we're going to create those opportunities for someone on our team to kind of get into that weak spot that we've opened up. That's why you flood the ballot. It's not something, where I've come to this position just on a whim. Like, I just want to see a bunch of libertarians on the ballot. I think about these things. It's every 2 years that we have a convention. So the next one will be 2018 in New Orleans. It's near. I'm not running at this point. So I don't have any plans to step down. There are some considerations. If I run again in 2018, I'm not a big fan of people who pull a Sarah Palin and run for an office and then step down from that office. So if I run in 2018, I'm really saying, I'm going to go out my full term through 2020. And then that's making me answer other questions, which I'm probably not able to answer right at this minute. So that's why I'm not running yet. I'm happy with the job. It's a very stressful job. Um, and I'm happy to not have the job. As soon as I find a person who wants my job, who I think is going to do it better, I'll probably just, start working on their campaign. Um, I don't feel like it is right to step down from the job while I still feel like I can add value or do something to raise the profile of the party or increase the strength of the party. And I've tried very hard to go out there and really raise our profile outside of those few months of the election, to try and make us part of the conversation outside of the normal news cycle when we have candidates running, in a way that I haven't seen as much from previous national chairs. They've usually
to wind things down, and so there's no reason to get into a lot of depth about this. But we certainly have seen a lot of strife in the party, whether it be in social media or in other areas. Is this part of the healthy growing pains of a party on the move, or is this a deep-seated frustration that will confound us to our dying days?
Some of it's healthy and some of it's not. I think I've always thought that internal battles within the party are important and necessary. We all care about this party very much, and we care about the direction of the party. And so those battles over, what the platform says, what the bylaws are, who the leadership are, those are real battles that should be fought, but they should be fought on the ground of libertarian issues. There are people in the party that disagree with me on things like the death penalty that was recently added to the platform, our opposition to the death penalty. That's a good fight to have, because we have real philosophical disagreements. Getting into personal attacks or, kind of tearing people down as people or questioning their commitment, that to me, sometimes it works. It's just kind of a cheap way to win, if you ask me. But there's another aspect of some what I consider to be healthy growth that's going to be a little painful, which is, we are a party that supports open immigration. We are a party that supports religious freedom. We have in the past aligned more with the right than the left, and more with conservatives than with liberals. And some of what is happening now that I'm seeing, at least on social media, and as a reaction to some of our press releases, where we're really coming out and taking a strong stand for open migration, we're taking a strong stand for individual rights, regardless of whether you are or aren't a citizen of the United States. You have dignity as an individual. That is pushing a lot of buttons for some people, and there are some people who are finding out that this may not be the party that's right for them. If they have a strong opinion that their politics should say that if you have a particular religious faith, you are bad and evil and unredeemable and not deserving of individual rights, the Libertarian Party is going to be a tough fit. I'm not trying to kick you out. I'm just saying you're going to have some friction there. And I would rather have that friction now, outside of an election cycle, outside of a convention, than let it sit and fester and try and pretend that it's all kumbaya and everybody gets along swimmingly. Similarly, with there are a lot of people in the conservative movement, in the broader quote liberty movement, that kind of idolize the Constitution and the decentralization of power that they see from application of the 10th Amendment and the states' rights doctrine. I think that can be a useful tool. It was useful in Colorado in legalizing marijuana. But to me, and it's something, I cribbed from someone else's Facebook thread, I understand Rothbard's need to hate the state, right? Like a real libertarian hates the state. They would push the button that would eliminate the state. I get that kind of thought, and sometimes I agree with it. But to me, to be a good libertarian, it's not sufficient to hate the state. You have to love individual liberty. You can't just live on opposition. You have to have something that you're fighting for. And what a lot of the Federalists and the 10th Amendment people and a lot of the conservatives do is they They put the Constitution on this pedestal and they say a smaller geographic size of the government is inherently better, even if that smaller government is violating individual rights. And my analysis of whether government's doing something good or bad comes down to, is it reducing government power over individuals or vice versa? Because if it's on the side of individual freedom, I'm going to support it. If it's on the side of government power, I'm going to oppose it. And I don't care whether it's the town, the homeowners association, the state, the UN, the federal government, it doesn't matter. I'm going to fight every time government tries to take individual rights, and I'm going to back every time that government tries to protect individual rights. And that is a philosophical difference. And we have a lot of constitutionalists in the party, and they're welcome in the party. But it's important to understand that the principles on which the party was founded, the idea of libertarianism, is kind of, it's not anti-constitutionalist, but it's not pro-constitutionalist. Sometimes they align, and sometimes, like the Three-Fifths Compromise, they absolutely don't align, right? I mean, human slavery is not a libertarian thing. It's definitely constitutional, or was prior to the...
To start swinging the pendulum back by the smallest increments we can, if necessary.
Absolutely. You know, I have never thought that the radical pragmatic dichotomy was even it's not even a real thing. It's a pretend argument. What I've always believed is that you should have as pure a vision of what libertarian society you want to build as possible. You should have a clear picture of that shining city on the hill, that world in which we're all set free. And that should be what informs your analysis of any particular issue, compromise, bill, amendment, person to work with or work against. You should always be looking at, this is my long-term goal. This is what I want to build. Does this move in that direction? Does it move as far as is possible right now? Is this a good enough thing for now? Am I willing to take it? And I am very open to coalition with pretty much anyone on any issue where we're advancing individual freedom. I will work with anyone. You know, I will praise the current president if he wants to reduce government regulation on individuals and businesses. That itself is great. The president, I'm not such a big fan, but that policy is good, and we will praise that policy. We will fight the other policies. So I think we should work with everybody. We should also recognize political realities of what's available. You know, there's a lot of internal discussion over marijuana legalization in the various states, with there being very, quote, radical libertarians who say, we can't back this marijuana legalization because it's going to provide taxes to government. It's going to have an excise tax. We're libertarians and we hate taxes, and taxation is theft. And it's all true. But, you know, if taxation is theft and being locked in a cage is denial of an individual's actual physical liberty, I'm taking taxation and theft every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's how it works for me. Other people come to a different conclusion, but we shouldn't put down what is available because of what we ideally want when it is not politically possible. You know, politics is the art of the possible. You should always, but at the same time, the current president presents a very important strategic point that a lot of people miss, which is you don't ever negotiate against yourself. You go big, you ask for something big, and then when you miss, you get something pretty big. And that's something that a lot of the radical libertarians can help us understand, is, you know, when we try and fight for all drugs to be legal, that opens the Overton window for cannabis to be legal. You know, when we talk about it as a human liberty thing, and we get people on this idea that, you know, there's something wrong with throwing people in a cage for doing damage to themselves. There's just something wrong with that at a deep moral level. Then they're more open to, and this is the incremental step by legalizing cannabis, which is not harmful even. They're more in a place to do that. than if we shy away from it. You know, one of the things that I would have said differently if I was running for president, which I wasn't, is I wouldn't have backed away from the idea that we want to legalize all drugs. I think that there's a way to clearly and coherently present that in a way where you don't sound crazy or nuts or, you know, needle exchange. No one has ever said, you know what, I was never going to do heroin. I've never done heroin, but now that I know there's a free needle exchange down at the local clinic, I'm going out and scoring myself a dime bag right now. No one says that. You know, making it safe for people, making it humane, treating people with dignity doesn't encourage drug use. It makes us better people. And there's a way to talk about all this stuff.
And has a positive economic impact on our society as well. We've seen that in other parts of the world.
This is where it requires principles and education, is you have to really understand what you believe in order to make that argument in a way where it makes sense to other people. You can't fake this stuff. You have to really, you know, to use a Heinlein term, you have to grok libertarianism to go out and sell it to other people.
Yeah. Thanks for the Heinlein quote, too. Great stuff here. Well, as tempted as I am to continue this discussion for hours and hours, it is getting a little late in our evening here. You, I'm sure, want to enjoy some relaxing time with your family this evening. Any parting thoughts for us here in Indiana and elsewhere in the nation as we wrap things up here today at the Indiana Libertarian Update?
The biggest thing, you know, and I would go around to state conventions and talk about this all the time. Be nice to each other. You know, we're not a big enough movement where we can afford to be mean to people, where we can afford to kick people out. And when you're going out and selling libertarianism, it's a lot easier. To put in really blunt terms, it's a lot easier for me to take a nice person and make them libertarian than to make a libertarian who's a jerk stop being a jerk. And people really need to know that you're a good person before they'll listen to your ideas. So you can have the best ideas, you can have tremendous ideas, you can have the best words. And if people think you're a jerk, they can't hear it. They can't hear what you're saying. So go out there and be engaged in your community, really listen to what other people need, what other people are concerned about, and talk to them about what's important to them. Don't talk about what's important to you, and just be a good person, because, you know, worst case scenario, if you go out there and a good person, they're like, you know, that Jason guy, you should never put him into office because he has some really crazy ideas about government. But he's a nice guy, and I wouldn't mind having a beer with him, and, you know, like, I don't hate him or anything. That's pretty good for a party that is as small as we are and kind of where we are in political evolution. That would be great if every interaction was like that, where it's the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm, make sure that they at least like libertarians, and then we'll kind of go from there. You know, we'll lay the groundwork for.
Well, and we'll leave it there with you. Nicholas, thanks so much for joining us today at the Indiana Libertarian Update. Going to come back and see us and let us know what's going on here in a couple of months as we get a little closer to 2018.
Love to do it. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, well, absolutely. Thank you. Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed that. It was a very interesting interview with Nick. And again, I apologize for the poor technical quality of this. We're working on a shoestring budget. I'm a one-man act, engineer, producer, performer, the whole thing wrapped up in one. Let's see here. Actually, let me do something a little bit differently here. And we'll come out here and part of this screen. But to do offer a big thanks to Nicholas Sarwark. Of course, that wonderful quote, "Your tears are delicious and your parties will die." Okay, Indiana Libertarian Update returns next week with Tim McGuire. We look forward to chatting with Tim about his recently announced candidacy for the LPIN chair. If you have any questions you would like me to ask Tim, be sure to send them my way as soon as possible. If you have a news story, event, or meeting you want us to pass along, just send us a message via Facebook or drop me an email. That's jsipe@sipesociety.com. jsipe@sipesociety.com. The Indiana Libertarian Update is a production of sipesociety.com, your one-man education and online content consultant. Until next time, I'm Jason Sipe. and I'll see you on the computer.